Hi, welcome to my new video. In this video I'm talking about immutable Linux distros and what my opinion of them is as, someone has been using Linux for, more than a year now. And I'm talking about, immutable Linux distros like VanillaOS, BlendOS, SteamOS in that regard. So let's go. Now, when I first switched to Linux, I've immediately jumped to EndeavorsOS. EndeavorsOS being an arch derivative, so yeah, not the easiest entry into the Linux system, I know, but it definitely was, the fact that it did not really guide me in any way or shape or form and expected me to learn terminal commands, etc. I gained really a drastic amount of experience on it. Again, with EndeavorsOS, I had the problem, sometimes the system broke down. I've even had the issue sometimes that grub wouldn't even boot up anymore. Again, it's Arch Linux based, so it comes with the territory. Now I've switched to Fedora, and on Fedora I've never had any stability issues. Because, again, what is the main selling point of immutable Linux distros? They are immutable, unchangeable at the core. You can install snaps, flatpaks, DistroBox containers. I've made videos about them in the description, you can find them. But they say they are rock solid. They are unbreakable. And as an average user, is this really your concern? What I meant to say is, as the average user, if you're working with a Debian Ubuntu-based Linux distro, working with a Fedora-based Linux distro, how often will you stumble across breaking updates? So on systems which are mutable, not immutable. What I meant to say is, how usable are immutable Linux distros specifically? And what I really must say that immutable Linux distros, especially for beginners, they are more trouble than they are worth. Because, sometimes you really need to install, for example, a firewall port master, for example, which immutable Linux distros either do not let you, do let you to install through many different sideways, so it's really problematic and break maybe after the next update. Because on Fedora and Ubuntu Debian based systems, there is definitely more security check, stability checkup for system updates before they are being released to you. So the likelihood that stability will be an issue is far lower than it would be if you're working with an Arch-based Linux distro. Then Linux distros say, you cannot accidentally delete an important files, etc. But then I must say, even if you are not the most experienced Linux user, the likelihood that you will delete some important system files is extremely low. I mean, how high was the likelihood of you accidentally deleting system32 folder in Windows? Okay, that's what I'm referring to. Now, it depends on the use case. For example, on SteamOS on the Steam Deck is definitely a good choice because you have a fixed hardware and onto which you install a fixed operating system. So everything is configured for you in that case. So for specific hardware, it's definitely a good idea. But I'm talking about immutable Linux distros on your home computer, etc. Because if you are new to Linux, I would really recommend you to either go with something Debian Ubuntu based, Linux Mint for example, SorenOS if you would want to, but Linux Mint is definitely the most recommended beginner distro, or something Fedora-ish if you're more experimental but still have a safe environment to work with. Do not get the wrong conception that I'm saying immutable distros are bad in any way, shape or form. I just say that for new beginners, for new Linux users, I think learning the proper way of responsibly working with the system files, updates, etc. is definitely far more important, especially if you want to have the maximum control of your operating system. Again, installing lower level packages, for example, maybe firewall port master, for example, or some other tools. Now, there you might also say, maybe I want to install a package, but this package requires dependencies which might break my operating system. And on Immutable distro I can install everything in containers, etc. and not have the issues. Now, you can also install containers, the same DistroBox containers, on a Mutable distro. That's exactly my kind of workflow, because I have a Fedora host system, a Mutable one, onto which I've installed, Arch, another Fedora, Debian subsystems, all based on the Pacman or DistroBox. And if I want to install some experimental hardware, experimental software, I install them inside DistroBox containers, because I do not want to clutter my main system. So you can organize everything on Mutable distros, etc. So you can install everything in containers on Mutable distros and still have maximum stability on your main system, while still have the freedom to install lower level packages on your main operating system if you need to. But yes, I'm more of an advanced user, and working with DistroBox containers for an absolute beginner, for an end user who has just jumped from Windows to Linux, might be a bit overwhelming. But to those people, I would say just install a Debian system, Ubuntu system, and use it normally. That I can really say so. So what I think is that immutable distros are per se a nice idea, but in all practicality, I think learning to work with Linux on a deeper level is far more important, and the stability problems on a Debian, Fedora-based distros are not an issue. Not one I've ever encountered. But yeah, what's your experience with mutable, immutable Linux distros? What kind of use case did you require from said distros? What's your opinion? Which one do you like more over the other? Again, keep working, because there's still much to do. Thanks for watching this video. Check out my channel if you're interested in music production on Linux, and go read Berserk.